Welcome to Scandinavian MIND Weekly, our show about the current trends and events within business, tech, fashion, design, culture, and more, from the Nordic perspective of our team of editors and contributors. Today on the program, the Otherlands NFT Art Festival just kicked off in Stockholm this week. We were there and we'll report back to you guys. We'll take a look at resilience.Tech, new buzzword within the tech community. What does it mean? Also, our special guest, Nick Buckley, joins us. He's the head of digital for L'Oréal in the Nordics. I'm Konrad Olsson, editor-in-chief and founder of Scandinavian Mind. And I'm joined by my good friends, Roland, Philippe, Kretzschmar, editor-at-large, and our junior editor, Erik, Sedin. How are you guys?
Hey.
Hey, good morning.
Just a quick congratulations on the premiere of the Konst show that people can see in the feed below this one. What have the reactions been, Roland?
Positive, I would say. Or, I mean, if people are silent, that's maybe because they're negative. I don't know. But I think generally pretty good feedback from the art community, both from artists and gallerists and curators. And, I have quite a long list of future guests. So very excited about that.
Wonderful. I'm super happy about that. And great job hosting without us. Did you miss us?
I did, definitely.
You had great help with the co-host, and I love that idea of having kind of like a co-host every week. That's going to be different, right? We had Mikael Elmenbeck, founder of CF Finland and Bond magazine, so that was great. Also, I think.
Yeah, I think that brings a bit of dynamism to the episode. Like us, we're three. It makes it more of a conversation, less of a Q&A session. So.
All right. Earlier this week, the NFT art festival called Otherlands kicked off in Stockholm, a completely new type of event. And I think the first time in the Nordics that someone tried to sort of gather the local NFT community. So I thought it would be interesting to talk about it. It was both an exhibition at the Bruno Gallerian. It was together with the clothing store A Place. And they had gathered some of the most sort of prolific NFT visual, like digital artists that are active right now. We had Andreas Wannerstedt, Jakob Felinder, Jimmy Hedberg, Neon Girl, also the Swedish kind of like fashion wonder, fashion brand Rave Review launched a digital clothing, a crypto panties NFT. So we were there. I was actually joined or invited to moderate the talks and interview the artists. And I have some reflections on it. But just Erik, you were there as well. What were your impressions from the exhibition there?
I was first of all, it's for me, probably for a lot of people there, like the first NFT festival or like the first NFT, art show or whatever. And of course, it kind of made sense to integrate fashion and a physical store into it to get people there. And I really liked, I wondered how they would present this, and it was basically just a bunch of screens where they showed it.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, would they have like some kind of, sometimes, we know that these NFTs would come with a physical copy, which happened in some of the cases, but it was basically just really like bright futuristic screens just going all over the place, which was cool. And also like the crowd, I can imagine, Roland will probably know this best, but there can be different kind of art crowds, right? I feel like in this NFT crowd, it's a lot of like pink and blue hair and stuff. Very much so. And like piercings, face piercings.
Yeah, I don't think that's the typical art crowd in Stockholm. So it was maybe leaning towards kind of a crypto crowd and also a younger kind of fashion-y event crowd. That was one of it. It was first kind of really crowded. It was a couple of hundred people or more, that very small place. So that was one thing, just having that crowded space. But you're right. The whole thing was sponsored by Samsung. Obviously, Samsung sees this as an opportunity to show off their screens, and there's a sort of a obvious connection there. But what did you think of the art? Did you have any favorites?
I was standing and looking for a long time at the I think they were called Be Wider. Like they had a
Yeah.
fashion drop, which I thought was
Mm.
really cool, and they actually had some kind of, because looking at a screen, fine, it's cool, but they had like a little room, like a booth where you could look on a, or for like 360 panorama view of like different screens of different fashion pieces and outfits, which I thought was
Mm.
cool. And obviously, I emailed them wanting to write something about them. They look really cool.
Yeah, also exhibiting was something called 12 Collective, which was initiated by Lynn Vexel. She's the founder of a music label called Milkshake, and she had gathered sort of both musical artists and sort of visual artists in creating NFTs. And they have their music on Spotify and all these platforms, but you can also, as a fan, then buy individual pieces of art as NFTs. And I thought overall they did a good job in showing kind of like a range. But there was actually something I wanted to bring up. When experiencing this sort of NFT place, and I thought it'd be interesting for us to discuss because at the end of the show we had Patrik Arneson, which is the founder of Forza Iconia. He has done NFTs recently to support the victims of Ukraine. He's made a drop called Mauer Digital with digital NFTs. He's kind of like the Swedish, the most, I don't know, famous, most successful kind of NFT personality in Sweden, and he held like a keynote about kind of how to succeed in the NFT space and so forth. And I think it was kind of like a stark contrast between all these other initiatives that was great creativity, people coming in with art and music and fashion and so forth. But this guy has obviously been successful kind of for real in the crypto community. I think the Mauer Digital project has a turnover of about $500,000 in terms of revenue from these Ukraine project NFTs. And what I was thinking about, I wanted to ask you guys. Um, he said something really interesting in that, if you want to be successful with NFTs right now, at this moment in time, you have to have access to this kind of crypto community, the people who actually have wallets, who are sitting on cryptocurrencies, who wants to sort of be in this space. And it just struck me how we are in this kind of contrast between what's actually being sold and what's kind of only being talked about in a way. There's kind of like this difference between the hype and what's actually, I mean the numbers for NFTs for 2021 is huge. I don't know, 17 billion or something.
21.
Oh, 21, yeah, thank you for that. But it's obviously huge, but it's just clear to me that that's just a very specific target group buying these NFTs. And here's my thesis, and I'm gonna let you guys in. Could it be that we are with NFTs where kind of VR headsets was 8 years ago? So 8 years ago, everyone talked about VR headsets. I think it's around that time that Facebook bought the Oculus. This was the future. Everyone's gonna have VR's headsets. 8 years later, it hasn't, broken the mainstream, but it might be soon. Who knows? But could it be that we are kind of expecting an NFT winter where, from this sort of very specific crypto community until it has broad mainstream adoption? What do you say, Roland?
What do I say about this? Well, you can always answer a question like that in two ways. One is to agree with you, and one is to disagree. Let's start with agreeing.
Mm.
Yes, there will definitely be a backlash of NFT art. That I have predicted for a long time. I
Mm.
think that just boom, a boost, a trend, a hype, whatever you want to call it. I think it's great because it has accelerated the whole NFT space. It has put a lot of light on it. It has promoted the technology, the use of the technology, I would say mainly as an extension of individuals' creativity, but also as an extension of brands. And in that respect, I don't think it will disappear as quickly as you would say the VR AR trend, as you referenced to, because there was a much larger gap between, let's say, the technology and the hype.
Yeah.
Here, the technology is already available. You can mint an NFT in 5 minutes after the show. It's quite easy actually. And also buying NFTs, yes, if you want to reach out to the hardcore community and you want to do it, let's say, in the right way, put in brackets, you would then ask people to invest with their crypto wallets, etc. But there are a lot of marketplaces, there are a lot of big brands that have launched NFTs which you can buy with fiat currency as well, right? So I'm not sure. I'm a bit hesitant to say that it will die in the same way, because technology is there. It's easy to do. We waited 8 years for Oculus to become relevant and price point to become relevant, right? I think maybe what will be a challenge is the saturation of the NFT space. So basically doing something that stands out, that is intelligent and smart and becomes a natural extension of a brand, if we talk about in commercial terms. But then I see also, I bought an art piece last week from an artist, Swedish artist. He asked me naturally, do you also want NFT? It just becomes part of the contract, part of the agreement, that you also get the NFT. So yeah, I don't know if I'm really answering your question or not, but these are just the reflections.
Interesting to reflect upon, because I think one thing that really needs to happen, and we're seeing a lot of players and commercial brands and new initiatives and people entering this space from more, say, like a legacy perspective, that wants to do NFTs. And I think the challenge there is there's a perception that there's this big crypto target group, because these are such huge numbers been thrown around, that people think that let's just tap into the crypto community and start selling NFTs. And I think what needs to happen, and perhaps events like this, like Otherlands, is good for that. You have to kind of educate the general public. So for this to be have mainstream adoption, there has to be a more mainstream usage of this technology. And I think a lot of people who, even if they sort of know what NFTs are and know what cryptocurrencies are, they haven't set up their wallet. They're not there. So,
but okay, can I ask you, Konrad?
Yeah.
What do you mean by success? I mean, everyone is always comparing now to Facebooks and Googles and Twitters, but I mean, not everything needs to be multi-billion-dollar companies in order to be successful. You can be hugely successful with a $1 million turnover, right? It depends if the scale, right? I think, to be honest, NFT art sold for $21 billion last year. For me, that's quite a significant number, right? So if you look at it just objectively speaking, it's a huge success. If it's overhyped, if there will be a backlash, yes, but there will be new use cases. And I think, we talked about this before, I'm repeating myself, but the whole area of utility NFTs, that's going to explode. That's going to be a $200 billion industry in the next 10 years. Everything we will do when we talk about contracts will be on the blockchain in the future. This is what we're seeing now. This is just the first step. Then, I think all these buzzwords about Web3 and, it's the new internet and decentralization, yada, yada. I mean, let's be realistic. We've seen buzzwords come and go throughout the years, right? But if you unbox what it really means, decentralization of internet, if you really unbox what blockchain technology can do for transparency in supply chain, etc., it is going to happen. It is happening. And NFTs, it's just one part of that huge industry.
Yeah, and I was actually happy to have a few of the artists present talking about the sort of notion of utility NFTs. Rave Review, the fashion brand, we're talking about it it's more like something that complements their current business and so forth. And there, I think there it becomes really interesting. Also, Jakob Felinder is an artist that we've obviously written about before. He has been in digital space and researched different technologies for quite some time. He just kind of casually said, well, all NFTs are kind of like a digital receipt, right? An advanced digital receipt. The NFT itself is not the art, it's the technology. So anyways, we'll definitely continue watching this space, and I'd like to congratulate the founders of the Otherlands NFT Art Festival on a great event, which they will be doing in the rest of the Nordics, and I think it'll live on. We'll see what happens, and we'll continue covering it.
And maybe deep dive in the Konst podcast moving forward. Who knows?
Yeah. All right, moving on. There's been a new term that's been thrown around recently called resilience tech. Roland, you've been watching this. What is it? Can you talk about Roland, you've been watching this recently. Can you talk about what this is?
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory to this. So, we have gone through a global pandemic. There have been other disastrous events in the world. We have the Ukraine war, of course, but there are many other events in the world happening all the time, which puts humanity at risk of some sort, right? And Gartner, it's a research institute, if you don't know, they launched a report last year where they talked about this resilience tech area, basically saying that, from an organizational point of view, that organizational resilience remains a strategic imperative, growing in importance as businesses face threats from pandemics, cybercrime, severe weather, climate change, civil and political instabilities, right? So there is this kind of idea that, there is a responsibility of countries, of states, of cities, of companies to keep their people free of harm, so we can continue to live sustainable, stable lives, right? And obviously now with just coming out of the pandemic, just entering the Ukrainian war, there is a lot of talk about this now in the tech industry. It's like, what is the role of tech as an industry? What is the role of technology in order to provide security for citizens, for employees? How can technology become, a foundation for a more sustainable, healthier humanity? And usually when we talk about resilience tech, you put it in 5 contexts. So you have the individual relational layer, you have the family, organizational layers, you have community, and then you have the national layer, right? And at the end, what do we mean by resilience? So resilience is, I would say, the way I interpret this, readiness to transform, readiness to resist, readiness to stand by and provide some sort of stability, right, as you transform. So, if you look at it from a national point of view, how do you ensure that a nation state thrives and survives, right? And what is then the role of technology for that? Or from a company perspective, it's the same, right? I mean, you don't need to put it in long-term perspectives. How do you survive in a pandemic? You're a restaurant. How do you survive? What kind of technologies could you use to change the business model to become more sustainable and resilient over time, right? And I can go on and on with examples, and also down to individual levels. Health tech, that's part of resilience, I would say. How do you use technology in order to feel better, to be stronger physically and mentally? That makes you more resilient as a human being, right? And gives you the possibility to thrive. So this is basically the backstory, and the reason this is kind of coming up now. Obviously, I mentioned Ukraine war, the pandemic, but also there is this, I would say, profile in tech, John Maeda. He's a professor He's engaged as a senior advisor to many companies. He's a lecturer, a trendsetter. He has published for many years now a trend report annually with different themes. And the theme for this year is actually resilience tech. And he started to build that trend report based obviously on the pandemic. But it is going to be interesting now with the Ukraine war and other conflicts around the world, and how the end result will be. And the report will be published later this spring. It's always available for free. So Google John Maeda, checking out on YouTube. He's a great lecturer, very inspiring. So yeah, that's the backstory.
Yeah, and he will we'll link it in the show notes, and it's going to also be launched at the South by Southwest Festival.
Every year it's launched there. Yeah.
Which I kind of, it's just a wonderful sign of spring in a sense that they are now back with the South by South festival. But really interesting. Thanks for putting this on our radar and on my radar. I hadn't heard about the term before. I think it's interesting that we are now seeing a much more nuanced discussion around how the big tech companies just what's been happening with Ukraine recently, and it's not as black and white as it has been the past few years with tech, big tech. Now we're talking more about what kind of responsibilities do they have in these much more difficult situations in terms of war. There's talk of kind of like, is there a new kind of iron curtain that's been veiled around Russia with the ban of Facebook and so forth, and no, really interesting perspective. I'll definitely look into it.
Yeah, and I think, just to add on, if you go beyond tech, and maybe this is a reflection for the listeners out there, it's the weekend coming, etc. How can you ensure that you become more resilient? I'm not going to lie. Coming out of 2 years of pandemic, now with the Ukraine war, it puts a lot of stress on you as an individual. I feel unrest. I feel insecure, unstable because of all these different events that is happening in the world. And I think the war, even though if I don't believe that it's an imminent threat to Sweden as a national state, still it puts a lot of stress on me. So there is this kind of reflection you can make, that how can I become more resilient to this, right? To change, to threats, to how can I become more resilient as a human being? Then maybe there is this part where technology can actually support me. In what ways? That's up to everyone to decide, right? But clearly this is something that is going to be talked more about, not only this year, but I think in the next decade.
All right, we are now joined by Nick Buckley, the CDMO of L'Oréal Nordics. Nick, welcome to the show.
Yeah, great. Thank you for having me. Very excited to have some interesting conversations.
Yeah. We are really looking forward to talking about some of the topics that are close to our hearts, which is sort of digital development, the role of tech in the lifestyle industries. I just want to start by saying that we had an interview with you last year on the Scandinavian MIND website. It was actually one of the most read articles of 2021. So I just want to congratulate you on that, and obviously a good reason to have you on the show.
I didn't know that. That's very cool. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, we need to start making some more content then.
Yeah, for sure. Can you just talk about, I mean, I think one of the things that really struck people with that article is your insights into sort of digital consumer behavior, how the role of digital is changing the sort of this still fairly traditional beauty industry, the lifestyle industry. Can you talk about what your role is, and we'll talk about some of the developments in the space?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so my background, I've always worked in digital, to be honest. So I'm not a classically trained marketeer or marketing or brand person. And I've also always worked for quite big companies, actually, quite corporate big companies. And historically, sort of 8-9 years ago, the marketing sort of model was very simple. You do a very big TV campaign, everyone would watch that TV campaign, and everyone would then flock to the store to buy that product. And then really over the last sort of, I think not that long really, like sort of 6 years, that just doesn't happen anymore. That correlation between big TV campaign and people buying stuff just doesn't happen for many reasons, which I could talk at length about. But we just don't see that correlation. But so as a result, we've changed, kind of had to change really that model, and it's because consumers are spending more and more time online, and where they're spending their time online, it's harder for big brands to sort of speak to them. So for us and for me, one of the things I'm most interested in is the topic of advocacy, and just how we can get people, consumers, anyone to talk about the brands that I work for without me forcing it down their throats. And that in itself is quite a challenge.
Wonderful. So, as a representative of big brand, global brand, what kind of challenges does this put on yourself and your role, and how to communicate and reach the consumer, would you say?
Yes, I mean, like, again, I don't need to talk about the big trends that we see that are particularly prevalent in the Nordic countries, in Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and Finland. Consumers are watching on-demand TV, Netflix, Amazon Prime. Amazon launched fairly recently in Sweden. So those places, we just can't speak to them with just kind of traditional run-of-the-mill ad campaigns. And so that's why we need to be a bit more creative, and really have far more focus on sort of content creation. And this is why, and I think I talked about it in the article, this is why I'm sort of obsessed by this concept of like a breadth and depth of content about beauty in this example, but it could be about anything. And then the mass distribution of this content to wherever people are. And that right. For me is like the key.
Obviously the challenge for any brand or personality that wants to reach out to have that kind of scale of content, and something that we work with as well. Talking about sort of being on the forefront of technology, there's been a lot of talk about concepts like the metaverse and Web3 and so forth. The past few months, the past year, we talk about it all the time on this show. How important is it for a beauty brand to be, at the forefront of digital worlds and so forth? What's your role there?
No, I mean, of course, it's important. And again, this is the luxury of working for a large organization. You have resources and people working on this full time. But ultimately, like wherever people are spending their time, that's where we need to be in some way. And we can't be there in a inauthentic manner, in an inauthentic way. So just by putting a banner ad on a gaming, site is not gonna do it. But equally, the fact that people are gaming doesn't mean that all they're interested in is gaming. Of course, a lot of these people also have other interests and other lives. So it's how we can sort of integrate into that world in a way that actually is of use and is actually meaningful. And that, and again, that is not easy. It's very easy to talk about and to say, but how we can integrate and be part of that world in a way that is doesn't stick out and look awkward is quite a challenge. But we're doing a lot of it. And a lot of it again is down to advocacy and how we can prompt people to talk about our products and then how they use them while they're doing these things in these worlds. So, but again, do I have the answer? Absolutely not. But what I love is just playing around with it and testing and learning.
And do you have any interesting predictions just on that specific topics? How can a beauty brand be part of the metaverse or NFTs or gaming worlds, in the future? Maybe not an application that exists right now, but do you have any predictions? Do you see any use cases that perhaps would surprise people?
Yeah, I mean, some of it, we're of course working on, and is not sort of public. But I think what is public is the whole NFT and purchasing products for these avatars and for these virtual beings in those worlds. They're not physical products, but they're virtual products. So that's a big area that is of interest, and again is meeting a consumer need. So ultimately, all we're interested in doing is meeting a consumer need, and if we can do that in these worlds, then fantastic. So that's one, these virtual products. And then number two, again, it's kind of, people and consumers have all of these needs, how we can answer these questions on these platforms in a way that doesn't look out of place. So a lot of it is down to conversations. So we are doing a lot of work on how we can integrate our stories, both brand stories and product stories, but also, answering these needs in these platforms. And it's, again, do I have the answer? Absolutely not. But we're playing around a lot with it.
Can I ask you, given that you have a Nordic role and you work in a big global company, how much of a difference do you see between the different markets within L'Oréal and let's say the speed, the operating model, level of maturity?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you can spot my accent, but I'm not from a Nordic country. I am indeed English and British, and I came from L'Oréal in the UK. So they asked me to come across and do the role here. UK obviously very advanced in terms of digital and behaviors and also just the population size. It's just so much bigger than the Nordic countries. So Nordic countries, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland is about 27 million people, give or take. What I am remarkably happy to see and excited about is that we see specifically in the Nordic countries just how advanced they are in terms of how they adopt technology, how they're open to online and purchasing and e-commerce. So honestly, we look at the Nordic countries as being as advanced as in Europe, UK, France, and Germany. And then globally, when we look at our media investments, there's only one other country globally who spends more in digital than L'Oréal Nordics, and that's China. So again, that gives you a sense of just how advanced L'Oréal Nordics is within the digital world. And thank God, because I would be a bit bored if it wasn't that case. It wasn't the case.
And given the history of the company and some of the challenges you mentioned earlier here on the way the industry has changed in the last decades, how much change management is part of your job, kind of getting the old timers to understand the digitalization and what it can bring and the benefits, and moving away from this old school campaign planning into this always on digital approach?
It's probably all the majority of my role. So L'Oréal have CMOs or CDMOs across many of the bigger countries, and our roles are transformational roles. Exactly. I mean, you kind of answered your own question there. Our job is to change the traditional marketing process and marketing plans, and really bring them to where things are today and where consumers are spending their time. So all of the profiles that we have, I mean, like I say, I've always worked in digital, and all of if I reflect at my peers across Europe and across the world, they all come from either digital or transformational type roles, and that is our number one task, is to change the model. And it was quite hard, sort of 6 years ago. Honestly, it was like quite confrontational and many challenges, and progressively things have become a lot easier. And now, to be honest, it's not a challenge to change that mindset. The challenge is just to continue to keep that momentum and continue being at the forefront.
And talk about the forefront. I mean, there's a lot of new technologies that Konrad mentioned that as well, that you need to explore, you need to test. How fast can you be then at testing new technologies without putting the brand at risk, or without getting stuck into organizational structure and decision-making processes?
Yeah. No, good question. And I'm fortunate to have worked for a lot of big companies. So Sony, I was in the global team at Sony, Marks and Spencer's, which is the biggest retailer in the UK, quite large organizations. And where I am today is by far the most agile. And we have quite a decentralized model. So it means that we have quite a lot of autonomy in the countries, in the markets. Of course, we have global teams, and again, we're a global company, a corporate company, and we have processes. But we have this concept here called organized chaos, and it's this concept where things are organized, but there is also chaos, and we fully admit and put our hands up to that. It's actually part of the interview process. It's like, how do you manage uncertainty, and are you structured and you like a very clear to-do list, or do you mind a bit of madness? And actually, we consciously need people who don't mind a little bit of madness. It depends what it is, but honestly, if we have an idea and we think it will work, we kind of do it fairly quickly. To give you an example, we launched a website last year in 2.5 weeks, and the website was it was during Corona, etc., and we wanted to offer a website for our staff to buy products, and we launched it in 2.5 weeks. We got a local supplier, a local vendor, we white labeled it, and we launched it in 2.5 weeks. And that's an extreme example, but we can do it pretty quickly.
There's been a lot of talk about the term beauty tech, and I think it's kind of the type of term that's been thrown around a lot, and I think it means different things for different companies. What does it mean for you guys, and do you use it at all in your work?
Yeah, we were quite early, we made quite an early statement on that word, and it's a tricky one because it can mean everything and nothing at the same time. And for a long time, we sort of challenged ourselves on exactly that question. What does it mean? What does it mean for us? And we're just now really starting to really formulate a very clear plan on it. And we have kind of three underlying principles of what we think like beauty tech is. Like the first one is just the tech part. This is the second word. And in its simplest form is like, are we using the very best, latest technology in the best possible way? And that technology could be anything. It could be how we buy digital media, programmatically with DSPs and SSPs, etc. So in its simplest form, it's just technology and integrating that into our business. And then we have the sort of slightly more grandiose topics around how we can use technology for the greater good of the planet, how we can use technology to formulate new ingredients, man-made ingredients, so more sustainable, how we can use beauty tech to give a better experience to our consumers, how we can use beauty technology for our employees. So the list goes on, but they're kind of the three very top level areas. And then within that, or under that, we have, again, some additional topics. So the first one is how we can use beauty tech for inclusive beauty. So things like online diagnostics. So if you're on a website and you have problematic skin, and you can use technology, it scans and it tells you what products you need to use, and it can also tell you if you're at risk of disease or so fundamentally having an amazing impact on people's lives actually. So that's the first topic around inclusive beauty, diagnostics, online diagnostics. And the second one under that is around personalized products, using technology to develop personalized products, customized to your own specific skin. And then the last one is around trend spotting, using technology to identify key emerging trends that may hit the Nordics in 6, 9, 12 months, but then setting things up now to really make sure we have an answer to those needs and those products.
We're gonna have to
beauty tech also
be
could it be digital? Could it be for an avatar on Roblox or whatever?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we purchased. So we're making acquisitions all the time, and we purchased a technology called Modiface from Canada in 2018 or 2019, I think. And we now integrate that into many of our retailers. So we have many retailers in the Nordics who use that technology so consumers can scan their skin and identify what type of makeup or lipstick or foundation that they would need. And then the next step, exactly to your point, is the integration of that into the virtual world, the metaverse, etc.
Cool. Just one final question. What of all these trends, all these developments, all these new technologies that you have to sort of keep an eye on, is there anyone that you are particularly fond of yourself privately, or does affect you as a person, or what are you most excited about?
Yeah. So to be honest, I mean, I'm very passionate about beauty, and I did my master's at the London College of Fashion. So I've always been interested in those topics. But I don't, to be honest, when I think of or when I look for inspiration, I don't actually look at other beauty brands. But if I do, I look at some of the local players, the local niche, we call them sort of semi-selective brands, predominantly skincare brands actually, who are doing some amazing things about, really solving and answering consumer needs. So I actually look more for inspiration to the smaller niche brands, specifically in the Nordics. Sweden have many fantastic local brands, same in Denmark, same in Norway, in fact. But more so, I look outside of beauty actually. So I'm really interested in those companies who just have like large consumer databases, a large amount of data, and then I'm super interested in how they use that data. So places like Netflix, places like Spotify, of course. And so for me, I get quite excited about just that large quantity of consumer data, and then the application, the activation of that. And in many examples, we can get learnings from that and apply some of those examples to what I'm doing every day.
Nick Buckley, Chief Digital and Marketing Officer for L'Oréal in the Nordics. Thank you so much for joining the show.
No, thank you for having me.
All right, that was the show. Thank you, Nick Buckley, for coming on. Please make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to stay updated on any drops and news from Scandinavian Mind. Visit scandinavianmind.com/newsletter. Until next week, bye, guys.